Chapter 491. The Clue of Shin Qingzhu. Bailey Pang Pang seemed to sense someone was watching him and turned his head in confusion. The shelves were empty with no one around. "Hey, let me tell you, our cat is really not an ordinary cat. The female sales assistant was still animatedly describing her amazing cat, pulling Bailey Pang Pang's attention back. Shin Qingzhu pushed his cart, standing in the dead corner of the shelves, his eyes flickering with light. He absolutely could not be seen by Bailey Pang Pang. If that little fatty saw him, he would definitely rush over, and the seventh seat was right next to him. Although he and Bailey Pang Pang teamed up, they might not necessarily win against the seventh seat, but the problem was that they had no guaranteed way to defeat him. If the seventh seat escaped back to the manor, the fact that he was not bound by the soul contract would be exposed, and his identity would be completely revealed. Most importantly, once the third seat learned all of this, they would definitely take countermeasures, and at that time the entire layout of the manor would change to conceal the existence of the altar. Right now, the first seat, third seat, seventh seat, ninth seat, and 12th seat were all in Lintang, and even the murmurs were about to descend. Shin Qingzhu knew best how strong they were. Even if Lin Qiye and the 008 team combined forces, they would not be able to compete. Ultimately, Lin Qiye and the others would likely be wiped out because of this. That was not what he wanted. His goal was simply to relay what the believers were doing, to let the Night Watchers know how deep the waters were here, so they would send a special team to resolve it. Shin Qingzhu took a deep breath and said to the seventh seat beside him, "I'm going to check out the snack area in front." Shin Qingzhu pushed his cart into the snack area, entering the visual blind spot of the seventh seat. Half a minute later, he came out holding 5 large bags of oyster-flavored chips. The seventh seat raised an eyebrow upon seeing the chips in the cart. "You still like eating these? What's it to you?" Shin Qingzhu replied coldly. The two quickly picked out all the necessary supplies. Fortunately, they only needed to prepare for a few days, so the items were not many. A single cart could hold everything. At the checkout, Shin Qingzhu took out the items one by one. He looked at the 5 bags of oyster chips for a moment, casually picked out 3 bags and tossed them into the basket next to the checkout. "Forget it, 2 bags will be enough." After paying, the two carried the plastic bags and walked out of the supermarket. "Old Chow, have you found anything?" Bailey Pang Pang leaned against a vending machine and asked as he saw Chow Yuan approaching. Chow Yuan shook his head. "No, besides the earthquake, it seems there are no other strange occurrences in Lintang. It looks like the issue is still with the earthquake. I think..." Bang. Before Bailey Pang Pang could finish his sentence, a crisp explosion sounded from nearby, followed by a chorus of gasps. Bailey Pang Pang and Chow Yuan turned their heads in confusion. They saw a bag of chips in a basket next to a checkout explode, scattering chips everywhere and startling the surrounding pedestrians. "It's just a bag of chips that exploded." Bailey Pang Pang shrugged and continued, "I think." Bang. The second bag of chips exploded right after. Bailey Pang Pang froze in place. Bang. When the third explosion sounded, both Bailey Pang Pang and Chow Yuan felt something was off. They exchanged glances and walked toward the checkout. They stepped over the scattered chips and went straight to the basket. At this point, the cashier was so frightened by the 3 explosions that she didn't dare move. Chow Yuan's gaze fell into the basket as if he had discovered something, and he reached in to pull out a small object. It was a black ring. "Soul-severing blade." Bailey Pang Pang exclaimed upon seeing the familiar ring. This is..." Chow Yuan and Bailey Pang Pang exchanged glances. "Shui Gu. Shin Qingzhu's ring?" Lin Qiye, sitting in the back seat, showed surprise upon hearing the voice on the phone. "Where are you?" "Okay, I'm on my way." Jialon, sitting beside him, asked curiously, "What's going on?" Lin Qiye rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "It seems this incident is indeed related to the believers." 10 minutes later, Lin Qiye and Jialon arrived at the supermarket. "So, you found Shin Qingzhu's ring in the basket after the chip bags kept exploding?" Lin Qiye glanced at the basket and asked. Bailey Pang Pang and Chow Yuan nodded. Injecting air into vacuum packaging and then gradually bursting them, that really is Shin Qingzhu's ability. Lin Qiye scanned the supermarket. "Did you not see him?" "No. He should have seen you, and he must be in some situation where he can't get away, trying to use these little gadgets to convey some kind of message." "What does he want to convey?" Lin Chia pondered for a long time and suddenly his peripheral vision caught sight of the surveillance camera hanging in the corner of the supermarket. His eyes gradually lit up. The surveillance footage you wanted is ready. Take a look for yourselves. The staff enlarged the screen and said. The four of them stood in front of the computer intently watching the screen. In the footage, Shin Qingzhu walked into the supermarket with a voluptuous woman, pushing a cart to buy daily necessities. Is that really Zhuai Go? Bailey Pang Pang looked at the woman with a strange expression. Is he dating a rich woman? Cooking oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, tissues, garbage bags, purified water. All daily necessities, and judging by the quantity, it doesn't look like it's just for two people. Lin Chia mused. They must be buying things for many people. In the footage, Shin Qingzhu, who was wandering in the daily necessities area, spotted Bailey Pang Pang not far away. After pondering for a while, he said something to the woman beside him and then walked directly to the snack area. He casually grabbed a few bags of chips from the shelf, then turned to observe his surroundings. Upon seeing the surveillance camera in the corner, his eyes narrowed slightly. He noticed the camera. Chao Yuan spoke up. No, Lin Chia focused on the screen. He came specifically to look for the camera. He pulled something out of his pocket and, in front of the camera, quietly stuffed it deep into the chip shelf, then casually pushed the cart back. Afterward, he went to the checkout with the woman, placed 3 bags of chips in the basket and left. Chip shelf. Lin Chia and the others spoke simultaneously. They quickly made their way to the shelf where Shin Qingzhu had stood in the footage. Lin Chia reached deep into the shelf and pulled out a crumpled little note. He unfolded the note, which had a line of small writing on it. North Suburb, number 42 Dongan Street, Abandoned Manor. Mingod Altar. Requires special team intervention. Chapter 492. Cut it down. North Suburbs. It really is the North Suburbs. Lin Chia murmured as he read the information. You know. Chao Yuan asked. Lin Chia nodded. I went to the Geological Bureau with Jialon and retrieved the information on these 3 earthquakes. From the epicenter, it seems to be roughly in the north. Bailey Pang Pang smacked his lips. Looks like we've found their lair. Then Bailey Pang Pang seemed to think of something. Brother Zhuang tipped us off. Does that mean? Beside him, Lin Chia's lips curled into a slight smile, casting a meaningful glance at Bailey Pang Pang. It means he hasn't been bound by the soul contract of the murmuring spirit. Pang Pang, your heavenly jade has done a great job. Hee hee hee. Bailey Pang Pang laughed happily. I knew Brother Zhuang wouldn't fall so easily. With the Sword Saint assisting us from the outside and Brother Zhuang undercover on the inside, I can't think of how we could possibly lose this time. Don't be too complacent. Lin Chia shook his head. Even if we have a strong chance of winning, we still need to act cautiously. Shin Qingzhu is alone undercover among the enemy. His situation is very dangerous and one misstep could cost him his life. Chao Yuan nodded in agreement. Let's go back and discuss our strategy thoroughly before we act. Safe house. Shin Qingzhu. And Qingyu seemed to ponder. Isn't he the one who killed Bailey Exon last time at the Bailey Group, the one wearing the white fox mask? Yes, based on the information we currently have, we can basically confirm that he is an undercover agent among the believers. Lin Chia spoke, but what the note refers to with the underworld god altar is still unclear. Sounds like a very dangerous thing. Bailey Pang Pang couldn't help but say. Meanwhile, Zhou Ping's brow furrowed slightly as if he was deep in thought, his expression becoming serious. Senior Sword Saint? Lin Chia noticed Zhou Ping's unusual demeanor. Do you know something? Zhou Ping was silent for a moment before shaking his head. Nothing. You just mentioned where is that altar located? North Suburbs, number 42 Dongan Street, Abandoned Manor. Oh. Zhou Ping stood up and walked outside. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned in place. Senior Sword Saint, where are you going? Lin Chia asked in confusion. Zhou Ping shouldered his sword case, pushed open the door and calmly said, I'm going to destroy that altar. Swish. A sharp sword intent flashed and the figure in the black shirt had already vanished without a trace. The people in the living room looked at the empty doorway, exchanging bewildered glances. Why do I feel like the Sword Saint is in a hurry? Bailey Pang Pang said suspiciously. It's not just your feeling. And Qingyu looked at the empty door and said firmly, he really is in a hurry. Should we go help or just wait here for news? Go help. Lin Chia said seriously. After all, the sword saint doesn't know Shen Qingzhu. If he accidentally strikes him down with a sword, that would be disastrous. Upon hearing this, Bailey Pang Pang and Chao Yuan jumped up from their chairs simultaneously. Damn. Just as everyone was about to rush out of the house, a girl in a white dress floated out from the wall, hovering in midair. This is easy. Are you going to find the believers? From the table, the girl's voice came from an MP3 player. Yes. Lin Chia nodded. Jiang Er looked at Lin Chia, her expression somewhat hesitant, as if she wanted to say something. Do you want us to take you with us? Jiawan saw through Jiang Er's thoughts. Jiang Er nodded slightly and said softly, I know my body will be a burden, but I can do many things and won't cause you trouble. She floated in the air, her lips pressed together, deeply bowing to Lin Chia and the others. They killed my comrades and I want to take revenge for them. The girl's voice was filled with pleading. The air fell into silence. Lin Chia stared at her for a long time before nodding slightly. All right, then you can come with us. Pang Pang, you carry the coffin. The ghost Jiang Er could only move within a kilometer of her body, so if they were to take her to the battlefield, they would have to bring the coffin along. Before Bailey Pang Pang could respond, and Qingyu calmly said, That coffin is not something an ordinary person can carry. He raised his fingertips slightly, and invisible threads instantly bound to the black coffin on the test bench. With a pull, the coffin flew in front of Qingyu. Previously, the coffin had been placed in the laboratory and no one had felt it. But now that it appeared in the living room, everyone immediately felt the temperature around them drop rapidly. Cold air was seeping from the coffin. This is an ice coffin made using my abilities, with an internal temperature reaching -69 degrees Celsius. Even with the special coffin boards isolating it, cold air will continuously seep out. Carrying it for a long time will harm the body. And Qingyu lightly tapped the coffin's surface and the threads pulled, automatically binding the black coffin to his back. He adjusted his glasses and slowly spoke. My body has been modified so I won't suffer frostbite. I'll carry this coffin. Lin Chia nodded and didn't say anything more. Chia, do we have time to take a car there? At the speed of the sword saint, I fear that by the time we wait for a traffic light, the believers will be wiped out. Bailey Pang Pang said anxiously, we can't rush over just to collect Brother Zhuang's corpse. We're not taking a car. Lin Chia shook his head. Not taking a car? Bailey Pang Pang was taken aback. If we don't take a car, how do we get there? He walked into the courtyard, reached out and pressed on the air. A brilliant summoning magic circle appeared in the air. As the magic circle's brilliance slowly faded, a red-haired woman in a deep green caregiver uniform stood quietly, slightly bowing to Lin Chia. Caregiver number 004, Flame Pulse Earth Dragon, red face. We will ride a dragon. Manner. Shen Qingzhu put the food he had purchased into the refrigerator and turned to walk out of the kitchen. Just as he rounded the corner, a figure approached him. Shao Shen. The ninth seat's face was still a bit pale, but it was much better than before. Seeing him, Shen Qingzhu's eyes flickered slightly. Senior ninth seat, how are you feeling now? The ninth seat waved his hand. I feel much better after a nap. It seems I really overexerted myself today. I even fainted just getting up. Thank you for going shopping with that woman from the seventh seat. Is she difficult to deal with? Seeing that the ninth seat hadn't noticed his subtle movements, Shen Qingzhu relaxed. Not too bad, there wasn't much to buy today so. Ding. Before he could finish his sentence, a crisp sword sound suddenly came from above the clouds. Chapter 493. A sword. Ding. At the moment the sound of the sword echoed, the third seat, sitting beside the underground altar, suddenly widened his eyes in terror. He abruptly looked up at the sky, his gaze seemingly piercing through the heavy ground. Catching sight of the figure standing above the clouds, his eyes filled with disbelief. This sword intent. In the courtyard, the lazy dog that had been dozing on the ground suddenly bristled, quickly getting up and staring intently at the sky above. Woof woof. A low growl escaped its throat, but it dared not bark. Its limbs trembled slightly. Even though it tried its best to appear fierce, its body uncontrollably retreated. Shen Qingzhu ran to the window, staring blankly at the clouds above, feeling an unprecedented sense of palpitations. although he couldn't see the figure above the clouds. The sword intent that filled the world seemed to have revealed his identity. Why did they come so quickly? He murmured to himself. The ninth seat walked over to him, gazing at the clouds, his previously regained color draining away once more. A human pinnacle has personally arrived? How is that possible? How did he find out? The ninth seat's eyes were filled with confusion. He gritted his teeth, hesitated for a moment, then quickly headed toward the underground altar. I'll go find the third seat, don't run around. In the corridor, Shin Qingzhu stood alone, staring at the clouds above, lost in thought. Above the clouds, a young man in a black shirt carrying a sword box quietly looked down at the manor below. North Suburbs, number 42 East and Street, abandoned manor. This should be the place. Zhou Ping murmured. Fortunately, I found it before it activated. Otherwise, in this special time period, the Great Xia cannot afford to be disturbed. Ding. The sword box behind him automatically popped open, and faintly, a slight dragon's roar mixed with the sound of the sword echoed, rolling through the sky like thunder. An ancient long sword flew into Zhou Ping's hand. The slender sword body trembled continuously, as if it were jumping for joy, as if it were cheering. At the end of the sword body, two complex ancient inscriptions were carved. Dragon Elephant. Zhou Ping grasped the sword hilt, squinting at the manor beneath him. After locking onto a specific location, he gently thrust the dragon elephant sword downward. Boom! A thunderous sound erupted from above the clouds. A phantom of the sword's edge pierced through the thick clouds, the 100-meter-long sword body cutting through the heavens and the earth, like thunder, instantly striking down to the ground. The sword light was like snow. The terrifying sword energy surged like roaring waves, rolling between heaven and earth. Beneath that phantom of the sword's edge, the heavy earth felt as thin as rice paper, the sword intent tearing a massive gash in the surface, penetrating the ground, precisely landing on that gray-white altar. Dong! The sword light swept across the altar, instantly cleaving it in half. The ground trembled violently, thick smoke billowing out from the altar, engulfing the entire underground chamber. At this moment, the third seat closest to the altar felt his pupils suddenly constrict. The residual sword energy surged like a tide, crashing against his chest, sending him flying like a kite, spitting out a mouthful of blood mid-air, crashing into the corner and fainting, his breath extremely weak. The ninth seat, who had just reached the staircase and was about to enter the underground chamber, was forced to stop. In the next moment, a thick cloud of dust erupted from the entrance, causing him to cough repeatedly. In the sky, Zhou Ping saw the altar that had been cleaved in two, his furrowed brow slowly relaxing. Just as he was about to take action, his gaze suddenly sharpened, glancing at the void beside him. Concealing and revealing. Zhou Ping spoke calmly. With a light slash of the dragon elephant sword in his hand, he cut open a section of space, forcing a man in a black tailcoat to emerge, his face extremely pale. Who are you? Zhou Ping asked. I was just passing by. The man stammered, a forced smile twitching at the corners of his mouth. Really, I was just passing by. At this moment Yu's mindset had completely collapsed. Damn it. How did this person get summoned here? They had clearly covered all traces. How did the higher-ups of the Night Watch discover it? Even if they found out, they didn't have to send a sword saint, right? Fighting was impossible. Even though his specialty was escaping, he still had no confidence in successfully fleeing from this sword saint. Now he could only hope to distance himself from the altar below and escape quickly. Oh. Zhou Ping nodded. Then you can leave. Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he turned to leave, a streak of sword light suddenly erupted from Zhou Ping's hand. Damn it, you grandma's handmade delicious crab buns. Yu's body was instantly torn in half by the sword light, the excruciating pain causing him to lose his composure, cursing out a profanity he didn't even understand. The black tailcoat burst forth with a flash of black light, instantly repairing his severed lower limbs. Yu turned to look at Zhou Ping, who had an expressionless face, his complexion extremely pale. He knew he had been targeted. Relying solely on himself, escaping was going to be very difficult. He lowered his head and shouted at the manor below. What are you waiting for? If I die, you won't survive either. In the courtyard of the manor, The dog let out a low growl, a conflicted look appearing in its eyes. Then it opened its massive mouth and howled at the sky. Woof. In the next moment, it transformed into a 100-meter-long azure-patterned earth dragon, its enormous body crushing the entire courtyard into ruins. Its massive wings flapped powerfully, creating a hurricane that shattered all the windows on the side of the manor facing the courtyard. The wind pulse earth dragon soared into the sky. The pressure of the peak Klein realm erupted from its body, and a loud dragon's roar echoed through heaven and earth. It shot up into the clouds, catching EU mid-air, its wings flapping like a streak of azure lightning, quickly fleeing into the distance. Zhou Ping quietly watched EU and the wind pulse earth dragon disappear into the distance, letting out a long sigh. Such a hassle. Ding. A sound of sword ringing echoed. His figure had already vanished from the spot. On the other side, Lin Qier and the others jumped down from the flame pulse earth dragon, staring at the devastated manor before them, their expressions becoming strange. The flame pulse earth dragon transformed into a human form, respectfully standing behind Lin Qier. It seems to be over. Bai Li Pangpang looked at the terrifying sword mark on the ground, along with the faint sword energy still emanating, feeling a bit anxious. Brother Zhua, he wouldn't have sacrificed himself, would he? Lin Qia's spiritual energy swept across half the manor, and he let out a slight sigh of relief. He's still alive. However, the other believers are still alive too. Chapter 494, Storytelling Meeting. Cough cough cough. Shen Qingzhu stood up from the messy room, coughing heavily a few times, waving his hand to disperse the swirling dust, and once again looked out the window. Just now, that sword that fell from the sky had directly cleaved the entire courtyard in two. Fortunately, Shen Qingzhu was positioned on the ground, so he wasn't affected too severely by the residual sword energy. Even so, the exterior of the house was already covered in spiderweb-like cracks. Looking at the scene before him, Shen Qingzhu couldn't help but feel a bit of lingering fear. A single sword strike from the sky could achieve this level of destruction? If that sword had been aimed just a little differently, he might not have had time to react and would have been cut into pieces. Shen Qingzhu took a deep breath and began to ponder. He had clearly seen the scene of that dog transforming into a dragon and ascending to the heavens. If he wasn't mistaken, that should be the mysterious first seat of the believers, who had dug through the underground of the manor and brought the altar back from outside. Must have been it. He hadn't expected that the rumored first seat had been hiding in the manor all along in the form of a dog. Fortunately, he had been quite vigilant during his time in the manor and hadn't secretly caused any trouble. Otherwise, he would likely have already been exposed and dragged out to be fed to the dogs. The aura of the murmurs had also appeared in the clouds, which meant that the first seat and the murmurs were now working together to contend with the Sword Saint. No, that shouldn't be considered a contest. It was more likely that they were trying to escape in front of the Sword Saint. So now only those few believers were left in the manor? Shen Qingzhu's eyes flickered with a glimmer of light. Zzz. In the chaotic room behind him, a faint sound of electricity crackled, which was quite jarring in the quiet environment. Shen Qingzhu frowned and turned to look inside the room, only to see an old-fashioned radio which had been gathering dust for who knows how long, suddenly starting to operate strangely in the corner. Zzz. Today's highest temperature. Z. Here, the Lintang City Broadcasting Station reminds all drivers, don't drink and drive. Zzz. The radio automatically switched between various channels. Shen Qingzhu narrowed his eyes and stepped toward the radio. Shen, why are you still here? At that moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. Shen Qingzhu stopped in his tracks and turned his head to see the 12th seat standing there, looking coldly at him. He glanced at the old radio operating on the floor and sneered, "No wonder you're such a favored person in front of Lord Murmur. The altar has been cut down, yet you still have the leisure to listen to the radio here? Truly calm and collected. What does that have to do with you?" Shen Qingzhu replied indifferently. "When addressing a senior, you'd better show some respect. If I hear you call me Shen again, I'll tear your mouth apart." Teet. A hint of disdain flashed in the 12th seat's eyes. "You and I are both at the sea level. Who tears apart whose mouth is still uncertain. If it weren't for the fact that you arrived earlier than me, I should be sitting in the 10th seat right now." "Is that so?" Shen Qingzhu's eyes narrowed slightly, a strange light flashing in them as he took a step closer to the 12th seat. Now that Murmur and the first seat were absent, and with the manor cleaved by a sword, everyone was thrown into chaos. It was the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the confusion. His peripheral vision swept around. In the entire corridor there were only the two of them. His right thumb and index finger silently pressed together. Just as he was about to snap his fingers, the volume of the radio in the corner suddenly increased, and a deep, magnetic male voice echoed in the room. Welcome to today's Lin Tang storytelling session. Last time we talked about the undercover agent, Brother Zhuang, who concealed his identity and infiltrated the enemy's territory, finding an opportunity to assassinate members of the evil faction, but was forced to halt his actions. Because his intuition told him that around the corner of the corridor, a woman was quickly approaching here. That was the deputy director of the evil faction's operations, known as the red-handled fan old lady. Li Kuden. The male voice on the radio noticeably paused when saying the last three words, and his tone became somewhat strange. At the moment he heard this part of the story, Shin Qingzhu's body jolted, and the finger that was about to snap suddenly stiffened. He slightly turned his head to look at the old radio in the corner, his eyes filled with confusion and disbelief. At that moment, from the other end of the corridor, the 7th seat, dressed in a red qipao and holding a folding fan, suddenly appeared, quickly walking toward them. She saw Shin Qingzhu and the 12th seat at the door, her brows furrowing slightly. What are you two doing here? The 12th seat looked a bit awkward. We were just injured by the residual sword energy and are just recovering now, Shin Qingzhu replied calmly. On the surface, Shin Qingzhu appeared completely composed, but he was already sweating coldly on his back. If he had really made a move against the 12th seat just now, even if he had successfully killed him, he would have likely been caught red-handed by the 7th seat. He never expected that the 7th seat would come out at this moment. That radio. Shin Qingzhu's peripheral vision glanced at the radio in the corner, suddenly thinking of a certain possibility. The 7th seat glanced at them, snorted coldly, "This isn't the time for you to rest and recover. Lord Murmur and the first seat are temporarily absent from the manor, and the 3rd seat is in a coma. From the perspective of the seats, I am the one giving orders. Just now, a few mice sneaked into the manor, but they aren't very strong. I've already sent the 9th seat to search the area. Since you two haven't reached Wuliang, you should act together and quickly catch these mice." The 12th seat shot a glance at Shin Qingzhu, looking somewhat displeased but still nodded. Shin Qingzhu's brows slightly raised. In the empty room, the deep, magnetic male voice continued to narrate the story at a leisurely pace. Of course, Agent Zhuang remembered that he had planted explosives on the 2nd floor of the ballroom, so his goal was to lure Li Kuden to the 2nd floor and everything else would be left to fate. Shin Qingzhu's mouth twitched slightly. The 7th seat and the 12th seat also heard this voice. The 7th seat glanced at the radio in the corner and coldly said, "What time is it and you're still listening to spy stories? Hurry up and search." Before the 12th seat could speak, Shin Qingzhu interjected, "All right, we'll search the 1st floor and the basement." The 7th seat looked at him and nodded, "I'll search the 2nd and 3rd floors. Hurry up." The 7th seat's figure flickered and transformed into a red shadow, disappearing from sight. Seeing her finally leave, the 12th seat's expression relaxed. He glanced at Shin Qingzhu beside him, not bothering to hide his disgust, and turned to walk in a certain direction. Shin Qingzhu silently walked into the room, picked up the old radio and then followed behind the 12th seat. "Get lost, I'm fine on my own. You go search elsewhere." The 12th seat frowned and said when he noticed Shin Qingzhu following him. "I don't want," told the radio, a slight smile on his lips. "It's too dangerous to go alone. I'm worried about you." Chapter 495. Silence. The 7th seat stood on the steps of the 2nd floor, scanning the surroundings but noticing nothing unusual. She took a step forward, walking at a leisurely pace. Tap tap tap. The sound of high heels echoed in the empty corridor. The wall on the right had long since deteriorated, exposing a large number of gray bricks, while the window on the left was entwined with intricate vines, blocking some sunlight and casting numerous shadows in the corridor. Aside from the echoing sound of her heels, the entire 2nd floor was dead silent. What she didn't notice was that with each step she took, a few blades of grass quietly sprouted from the cracked tiles, silently growing. Lush and tender green, They filled the desolate and decaying manor with the breath of life. Slowly, the corridor behind her had gradually transformed into a verdant meadow. The seventh seat seemed to sense something, her brows slightly furrowing. She stopped and turned to look back. Her pupils suddenly constricted. A girl in a white dress without legs was silently floating behind her, her cold eyes gazing at her like a silent ghost. Before the seventh seat could react, the ghost lunged into her body. From that moment on, the seventh seat lost control of her own body. Almost simultaneously, the lush grass that spread across half the corridor ignited like a prairie fire, instantly overtaking the entire hallway, with successive flower buds blooming from the grass, forming a swaying sea of flowers in the blink of an eye. Immediately after, flower buds began to bloom on the surface of the seventh seat's skin as well. The seventh seat, whose body was usurped by Jiang, quickly drew a short sword from the sheath at her thigh, turning the blade toward herself and stabbing toward her throat with lightning speed. Terror flashed in the seventh seat's eyes. In the fear of life and death, the seventh seat's magnetic field violently fluctuated, and the short sword that was about to pierce her throat hovered in midair. Her entire body trembled violently, as if she was about to break free from this possession. Zzz. Her emotional fluctuations are very strong. I can barely keep up with the changes in her magnetic field. From a corner of the second floor, a girl's voice came from an MP3 player. Whoosh. A quiet boy carrying a black coffin rushed out from a nearby room, darting in front of the seventh seat, who was on the verge of losing control. His fingertips instantly wrapped around the short sword with threads, and a tremendous force broke the rigidity caused by the seventh seat's resistance, driving the sword tip directly into her throat. Puff. The seventh seat's skin was tougher than imaginable. The sword tip merely left a faint blood mark on it, and the pain from the stab completely ignited the seventh seat's emotions. Jiang figure was ejected. A hint of gray flashed in Qingyu's eyes as he pulled a purple test tube from his pocket and tossed it toward the seventh seat. Though the seventh seat didn't know what was in the test tube, she still dodged to the side. Just as the test tube flew past her, an arrow suddenly shot out from the other end of the corridor. The arrowhead accurately struck the test tube. Bang! The test tube exploded, and concentrated mental pollution instantly enveloped the seventh seat. It's okay, you've bought enough time. And Qingyu adjusted his glasses and smiled. At this moment, the vibrant flower buds had already covered half of the seventh seat's body, and they were rapidly absorbing her mental and physical strength at an astonishing speed, becoming increasingly vivid. What is this thing? Under the dual negative states of super-concentrated mental pollution and eternal secret garden, the strength of the seventh seat's mental power began to plummet sharply, plunging her into an unprecedented state of weakness, with her consciousness starting to blur. She knew her situation was extremely dire. If this continued, she would likely die silently on the second floor. She had to do something. Even if she couldn't kill the enemy, she needed to create a commotion to attract other believers. She bit her tongue, the pain sharpening her awareness again. She raised the folding fan in her hand, just about to make a move when a voice drifted from afar. Chaos of the universe. In the next moment, the folding fan she had just lifted slipped from her hand. Caught off guard, her weapon was gone. She stood frozen in place. After a moment, she snapped back to reality, opened her mouth and was about to shout something. Before she could make a sound, a foreign sensation suddenly surged from her throat. The seventh seat covered her mouth and began to gag violently. Then a white flower bloomed in her mouth, blocking it. Her face turned pale. The longer she delayed, the more flowers grew. Her legs lost all strength and she weakly knelt on the ground, desperately searching for something around her. From the beginning until now, aside from the boy carrying the black coffin, she hadn't even seen the shadow of any other enemies. She felt like a prey caught in a trap, struggling alone, while the real hunter silently observed from the shadows. The seventh seat had never felt so suffocated. If it were her during her peak, breaking through these strange flowers wouldn't be difficult, but now she was possessed by a ghost and suffering from mental poisoning. She had delayed for too long. She was growing weaker while the flowers on her body grew stronger. Once she weakened to a certain extent, she would completely lose the ability to resist. Without help from others, her only fate was to be completely drained by these flowers, forever trapped in this secret garden. The seventh seat lay on the ground, gasping heavily, her face devoid of any color, and even the scene before her began to blur. An unprecedented despair surged in her heart. At that moment, a figure quietly approached her. The seventh seat struggled to lift her head. It was a figure wearing a Sun Wukong mask, the mask cartoonish and even somewhat comical. But in the eyes of the seventh seat at that moment, this mask appeared as terrifying as a demon. He extended a finger, gently placed it in front of the mask's mouth, making a hush gesture. Shoo. First floor. Shin Qingzhu walked calmly behind the 12th seat holding a radio. The deep voice from the radio continued to echo in the corridor. The agent codenamed Sun Wukong stood calmly in the fire, looking down at the barely breathing Li Gaodan, smiling as he made a hush gesture. Li Gaodan's eyes widened, filled with endless fear. In the end she stopped breathing. No one in the entire faction noticed that the action director Li Gaodan had quietly died on the second floor of the ballroom. It's your turn. Shin Qingzhu slowly came to a stop. Chapter 496. He is very skilled. After finishing the last sentence, the deep male voice completely vanished, and the air fell into silence. The sudden silence left the 12th seat somewhat puzzled. He turned around to look at Shin Qingzhu who was standing behind him. You finally turned it off? Shin Qingzhu shook his head. I didn't turn it off. The story that follows will be completed by me. He extended his hand and gently snapped his fingers. Snap. Second floor. Lin Chia reached out and tapped the withered 12th seat, whose body instantly shattered like sand, disappearing into the lush green ground beneath his feet. The flowers on her body, after absorbing all her life force, had bloomed to an exaggerated extent. Lin Chia slowly stood up and all the flowers in front of him disintegrated into specks of light, while the lush green ground beneath his feet also vanished. At the moment the eternal secret garden dissipated, Lin Chia distinctly felt a surge of pure mental energy flooding into his mind. The consumption of the Forbidden Realm was replenished, even slightly raising his level. A look of surprise appeared in his eyes. The life force and mental energy absorbed by those flowers could actually be partially returned to themselves. Strictly speaking, this was Lin Chia's first time using the Eternal Secret Garden to kill. The last time in Xining when he fought against the members of Team 009, he hadn't gone for the kill, so he hadn't realized that this Forbidden Realm had such an effect. Although Lin Chia didn't know the woman's rank among the believers, just based on her mental energy at the limitless level she should be among the top. After being drained into a dry corpse by the secret garden, her life force and mental energy merged into the garden. And the secret garden then extracted a portion of that mental energy to return it to Lin Chia. It was certain that the secret garden, as a middleman, was quite greedy. Having consumed a limitless level powerhouse, the mental energy returned to Lin Chia was just so barely better than nothing. This could only be considered a token of effort. How many are left? And Qingyu walked over to Lin Chia and asked. 3. Lin Chia scanned the manner with his mental energy and replied calmly, one is fighting Shin Qingzhu, one is the 9th seat we saw last time at the Bailey building still wandering in the yard, and the last one is at the underground altar just waking up. They shouldn't have noticed, right? No, we were very discreet. We didn't make any noise throughout, and with the fat forbidden object isolating the aura nearby, they didn't even realize they had lost a person. Lin Chia shook his head. This ambush could be said to have been planned for a long time. After Lin Chia and the others infiltrated the manor, they went directly to the second floor. Using Jiang Er's ability, they contacted Shin Qingzhu and had him lure a believer to the second floor for a quiet kill. If they had confronted the 12th seat head-on, Lin Chia and the others could have killed him, but that would have inevitably attracted the attention of the other believers, putting them in a besieged position. Therefore, the primary principle of this ambush was to be silent. Whether it was Jiang Er's spirit communication field, and Qingyu's concentrated mental pollution, Lin Chia's eternal secret garden, or the Fat One's universal disarmament, all were aimed at killing the 12th seat without making a sound. Next, the main threats are the Klein-level man underground and the 9th seat wandering in the yard, Lin Chia carefully sensed. The good news is that the Klein seems to have been severely injured by the Sword Saint's sword energy. His aura is very weak, so we do have a chance. Should we kill him first or the 9th seat? Qingyu asked. Bailey Fatty smacked his lips. That 9th seat, how should I put it? He seemed quite pleasant last time. It feels a bit regrettable if he just dies like that. Then let's go underground first and kill the Klein, Lin Chia said. As long as the Klein is dead, the ninth seat is just a limitless after all. We can handle him however we want. Just a limitless, Chao Yuan sighed. Have we become so bold now? Be a bit more confident. After all, we are students of the Sword Saint. What's a mere limitless? Bailey Fatty patted his shoulder. Oh right, I forgot. Old Chao, you're still at the Chuan level. Chao Yuan. Come on, old Chao, even Jiang Air has reached the sea level. You as a senior are a bit embarrassing, huh? Meanwhile, Jiang Air, floating in midair, lowered her head, feeling a bit shy as she said. My level isn't entirely from my own cultivation. It can't be compared. Not entirely from your own cultivation? Bailey Fatty looked at her in confusion. Can one's level not be achieved through their own training? Not just Bailey Fatty but the others also looked puzzled. Something's happened. Jiang Air seemed reluctant to elaborate on this issue and vaguely brushed it off. The group wisely chose not to press further. By the way, does Brother Zhuang need our help? Bailey Fatty asked with some concern. No need. Lin Chia's lips curled slightly. It seems he has become quite skilled at assassination. First floor. Deathly silence. The silence was not due to quietness, but because the air that transmitted sound had been completely drained. The battered 12th seat seemed to have gone mad, desperately rushing in a certain direction. He opened his mouth to an exaggerated extent, trying to breathe in fresh air, his eyes filled with terror. Suddenly, his body slammed into an invisible wall, bouncing back violently. He fell heavily to the ground, his veins bulging, his expression silently contorted in rage. Shin Qingzhu stood calmly against the wall with his hands in his pockets, lowering his head to pull out a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it with his fingertip. Yes, lighting it. Next to him was the only place in this vacuum where air still existed. Who? Shin Qingzhu leisurely exhaled a smoke ring. The 12th seat stared at Shin Qingzhu, and suddenly he sprang up from the ground, an eerie black light radiating from his body as he shot toward Shin Qingzhu like a sharp arrow. Bang! Once again he was bounced back. An invisible high-pressure air wall had completely sealed him inside. Over 600 cubic meters of air had been compressed by Shin Qingzhu into a gas wall less than 2 millimeters thick. It looked like a thin sheet, but even the bombardment of an intercontinental missile could be easily resisted, let alone just a 12th seat. The 12th seat frantically pounded against this gas wall, roaring silently as if cursing something. Shin Qingzhu showed no interest in what he was saying. He simply held the cigarette, smiled at him and slowly spoke. In your next life, remember to show some respect to your seniors. Snap. That 2 millimeter thick high-pressure gas wall instantly condensed into a beam, drilling through the respiratory tract into the 12th seat's lungs. Then, it exploded with a thunderous roar. Chapter 497. All under control. Border of Lintang City. Above the clouds, a massive green shadow swept across the sky, its wings flapping powerfully, stirring up a fierce wind, and in the blink of an eye, it flashed forward several hundred meters. On the back of that green shadow, EU's gaze was alert as he scanned the surroundings, his expression extremely grave. In the sky, apart from the drifting clouds, there was nothing else. Zhou Ping seemed to have given up on pursuing them. Even as they were about to fly out of the edge of Lintang City, he still did not reveal himself. Yet even so, EU did not relax in the slightest, for the unsettling and fearful feeling of a sword hanging over his head still made his body tremble uncontrollably. Not being able to see Zhou Ping only intensified his fear. Ding! An invisible sound wave came from behind, and a strand of sword energy instantly pierced through space, striking the left wing of the Wind Vane Earth Dragon. EU only felt a flash of white light, and the Wind Vane Earth Dragon let out a painful roar. Just from this strand of sword energy, 2/3 of its left wing had been severed, the cut smooth and clean, blood spraying out. The Wind Vane Earth Dragon, losing its center of gravity, tilted to one side. Fortunately, the fierce wind supported its body, preventing it from losing control entirely, and it continued to fly forward unsteadily. Another light sound followed. The second strand of sword energy whistled in. EU turned his head, his face somewhat pale, the black tailcoat on his body billowing in the wind. He extended a hand and a brilliant and illusory light burst forth from his palm, attempting to envelop that strand of sword energy. Nightmare, EU murmured to himself. The illusory light flowed rapidly, and in a daze, it seemed as if one bizarre world after another was born within the light, forcibly swallowing that strand of sword energy. Standing on the back of the wind-vane earth dragon, EU let out a muffled groan, his face turning ashen, blood slowly flowing from the corners of his mouth, his nostrils and both ears. Using a real nightmare to forcibly swallow this strand of sword energy inflicted great backlash on his body. The sword energy of the Sword Saint was not so easy to handle. Zhou Ping's surprised voice drifted down from the sky as he watched the two speeding figures, murmuring, "Let me see how many swords you can take from me." Ding 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 ding. A series of sword cries swept across the sky, the dispersed sword intent directly tearing the thick clouds along the path into fragments, an invisible killing intent enveloping the entire sky. Among them, two strands of sword energy actively sliced into that illusory light, shattering it forcefully. Puff. EU suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, his mind feeling as if it had been turned to mush by those two strands of sword energy, his consciousness blurring, unable to even stand steadily. Black blood began to flow from all 7 orifices. Despair appeared in EU's eyes. There was no escape. At this rate there was no escaping. Turn back, let's fight him. EU's eyes sparkled with determination as he gritted his teeth and spoke. The wind-vane earth dragon beneath him hesitated instinctively, resisting this command, but under the control of the soul contract, it still chose to turn back, letting out a roar as it charged fiercely toward those strands of sword energy. Roar, 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 roar. It opened its mouth and a green whirlwind brewed in front of it, then surged forth with a dragon's roar. Soul wind caused those strands of sword energy to ripple slightly, but it did nothing to slow their speed. The massive sword energy struck the wind-vane earth dragon's body, instantly leaving several deep, bloody gashes. The sword energy rampaged within the wind-vane earth dragon, the excruciating pain making it forget its instinct to fly, its massive body uncontrollably plummeting downward. Its breath became extremely weak. Seeing this scene, Zhou Ping's brows furrowed slightly. He stepped through space and arrived beneath the descending wind-vane earth dragon. Letting such a large earth dragon fall back into the city would inevitably cause massive casualties and panic. He could not allow that to happen. Then let's cut it down to nothing. Zhou Ping gripped the dragon elephant sword, his eyes narrowing slightly. He looked up at the massive earth dragon body falling from the sky, and with a sound of sword ringing, the sword energy surged outward explosively from him. He raised his hand toward the wind-vane earth dragon above, and slashed out with a sword. Countless fine strands of sword energy surged like waves crashing against rocks, instantly enveloping the wind-vane earth dragon's body. In the thick, mist-like sword energy, blood began to spread at an astonishing speed. Every dragon scale, every tooth, every claw of the wind-vane earth dragon was like white paper thrown into a shredder, easily sliced into fragments. The wind-vane earth dragon, equivalent to half a small mountain in size, began to bizarrely dissipate in the air. 3 seconds later, the body of the wind-vane earth dragon had completely vanished. Blood mist slowly dispersed with the gentle breeze. Zhou Ping looked up at the other side. Under the vast sky, there was no longer any sign of EU, and his gaze sharpened. He actually ran away, in the manner. Xin Qingzhu walked through the corridor on the first floor. After leaving the scene of the 12th seat's death, she placed the radio on a windowsill, confirming that there was no one else around, and spoke. "Can you hear me?" "Si." The radio started up again. "I can." This time the originally deep and magnetic male voice had disappeared, replaced by a girl's voice. Jiang Er could freely control the tone of her voice through adjusting the radio's magnetic field, simulating anyone's voice. "Can Lin Chia and the others hear it too?" "Yes, they are right beside me." Jiang Er paused. "They asked me to send their regards to you, Agent Cool Guy." A barely noticeable smile appeared at the corner of Xin Qingzhu's mouth. "We can catch up later. Have you found out where the 3rd seat is?" "Next to the underground altar. He has already been seriously injured and we are on our way there." "Seriously injured?" Xin Qingzhu pondered. "What about the 9th seat? You didn't go after him, did you?" "He is also on his way to the underground altar." We specifically avoided his route. Good, I'm closest to the underground entrance. I'll go ahead and act according to the situation. Shin Qingzhu set the radio aside and entered the underground passage. After Zhou Ping sliced open the altar, the entire underground space was in disarray, the air filled with dust making visibility somewhat blurry. As Shin Qingzhu descended, she focused on her surroundings. Amidst the hazy dust, the massive gray altar had been cut in half from the center, and at the foot of that altar, a figure stood. The third seat. Seeing this scene, Shin Qingzhu's brows furrowed slightly. The altar had already been destroyed, yet the third seat remained underground. What did he intend to do? Cough, cough. The pale-faced third seat looked at the altar before him, coughed a couple of times, and then noticed the noise coming from the stairs, turning to look. Seeing it was Shin Qingzhu, his expression relaxed considerably. How's the situation outside? The third seat asked. Shin Qingzhu hesitated for a moment. Everything is under control. Chapter 498. We cannot lose. Where's the Sword Saint? He was drawn away by Lord Murmurs and a dragon. The third seat let out a slight sigh of relief. That's good. If he were still here, things would get complicated. Confusion flickered in Shin Qingzhu's eyes. Wasn't the altar already destroyed? What else can be done? The third seat shook his head, looking at the altar that had been split in two. He reached out and gently placed his hand on its surface. On the gray altar, the yellow-brown unidentified objects clinging to the gap seemed to come alive, twisting eerily as they left the original break and surged toward the central crack. They crawled to the center of the break, acting like a living glue, pulling the two halves of the altar toward the center, slowly restoring it to a whole. Shin Qingzhu stood frozen watching this scene. This altar was already damaged. Even if the Sword Saint cut it in half with one strike, it would only make the damage worse, the third seat said, watching the writhing yellow-brown objects. These yellow things are called source conductors, sequence 476. They aren't dangerous, but they are important forbidden items treasured by the ancient God Church because they possess absolute adaptability to mental power. They act like a universal glue on the mysterious side. No matter where they stick, they can perfectly serve as a mental power conductor. Even if this altar is shattered to pieces, as long as it is still connected, it can still function. Now we just need to inject 2 more days of mental power, and the god of the underworld altar can be revived. A fiery look appeared in the third seat's eyes. Shin Qingzhu's expression became subtle. Third seat. The ninth seat leaped down from the ground that Zhou Ping had slashed open, landing in front of Shin Qingzhu and the third seat, his expression somewhat grave. Have you seen the seventh seat? The third seat shook his head. I was underground the whole time. I just woke up not long ago after being affected by the Sword Saint's sword energy. What's wrong? The seventh seat is missing and the 12th seat is also gone, the ninth seat said, frowning. Earlier, the seventh seat came to tell me that there were intruders in the manor and asked me to search the yard. After that, I never saw her again. Shaoshan, have you seen them? Shin Qingzhu thought seriously for a moment and shook his head. I haven't seen them. Boom. Suddenly, the ceiling of the underground space exploded, thick smoke billowing up as several figures landed steadily on the ground. The third seat and the ninth seat frowned simultaneously. They turned to look, and saw 5 figures wearing Journey to the West masks slowly walking out of the smoke. Some carried black boxes while others bore black coffins and a white ghost floated in the air. It seems the seventh seat was right, the third seat said coldly. There are indeed rats that have intruded. Seeing the third seat's face, the floating Jiang heir's eyes instantly ignited with fury. Her fists clenched tightly. Lin Qier and the others noticed her expression and simultaneously looked at the third seat standing in the center. Is it him? Lin Qier said slowly. From the MP3 at An Qingyu's waist, Jiang heir's cold voice came through. Yes, he is the one who walks the dog. Lin Qier nodded, narrowing his eyes, a surge of killing intent rising within. Don't worry, he won't leave here alive today. By the altar. The third seat's gaze swept over the group, and he whispered in the ears of the ninth seat and Shin Qingzhu. Follow my instructions and retreat in different directions. Confusion appeared in the ninth seat's eyes. Retreat? Aren't we going to fight? I'm currently injured by the Sword Saint's sword energy, and my strength has greatly diminished. It's better to be cautious. Besides, they don't know the secret of the altar. Once we draw them away, we can circle back and complete the altar's ritual. Beside him, Shin Qingzhu pondered for a moment and spoke seriously. Senior third seat, I think this approach is unwise. The third seat looked at him. They only have 6 people, and the highest realm among them is Sea Realm, while we have 1 Sea Realm, 1 Infinite, and 1 Klein. In terms of combat power, the 9th seat alone can suppress them. Plus, with my Qi Min, we can definitely catch them off guard. And although you, senior third seat, are injured, you can still exert infinite-level combat power. Given all this, how could they possibly be our opponents? We can't lose, so we don't need to run. The 9th seat nodded repeatedly. The third seat looked at Shin Qingzhu's determined expression and hesitated a bit. Deep down, he didn't think they would lose either, but for safety's sake he still felt it was better to avoid a direct confrontation. After all, he was too weak right now. And if we run, what will Lord Murmurs think when he returns and sees that the altar has fallen into their hands? Shin Qingzhu slowly threw out a trump card. Hearing this, the third seat immediately dismissed the idea of fleeing. You're right. The third seat coldly looked at the figures before him. We won't lose, so there's no need to run. Let's kill them. As soon as he finished speaking, the 9th seat and Shin Qingzhu simultaneously lunged toward Lin Qier and the others, their eyes filled with killing intent. A bunch of rodents, how dare you act so arrogantly before us? Shin Qingzhu said fiercely. The 9th seat extended his hands, a powerful spiral energy swirling in his palms as the infinite realm's fluctuations descended upon the battlefield. Since Lin Qier and the others were all wearing masks, he naturally couldn't recognize them as the Good Brothers, who had fought alongside him on the Baili building. In fact, even if he did recognize them, he would still attack. After all, he was a believer. This was a matter of differing stances. Before Lin Qier and the others could act, the white figure floating in midair shot out first, crashing into the 9th seat's body. The 9th seat's body jolted, abruptly stopping as his controlled body slowly turned to look at the third seat standing behind. Then he suddenly charged toward the third seat. Seeing this scene, Shin Qingzhu was momentarily stunned, then a smile flashed in his eyes. He glared fiercely at Lin Qier, raising his hand as if to snap his fingers. Today I will fight you to the bitter end. Shin Qingzhu declared with high spirits. He winked at Lin Qier. Lin Qier seemed to have thought of something, raising a finger to point at Shin Qingzhu. A streak of black light ignited from his fingertip, his eyes becoming suffused with an eerie black. Mental manipulation, he shouted loudly and confidently. Ah! Shin Qingzhu suddenly clutched his forehead, stepping back 2 paces, his expression shifting dramatically. Then, somewhat dazed, he raised his head and stiffly turned to look at the bewildered third seat behind him. Today I will fight you to the bitter end. Shin Qingzhu shouted, charging toward the third seat alongside the 9th seat, who was being controlled by Jiang Er. The originally 6-on-3 situation instantly flipped, turning into an 8-on-1. The third seat stared at this unbelievable scene, dumbfounded. Chapter 499. Nine. The third seat couldn't understand. He had been a believer for so many years, yet he had never encountered such a bizarre situation. Wasn't it supposed to be a 3-on-1, completely overwhelming with a realm advantage? Your wheels are literally grinding into my face. He couldn't comprehend who this person in front of him was, or where they had acquired so many means of manipulation. Watching his 2 teammates turn against him, the only thought in the third seat's mind was to run away. But it was already too late. The masked figures had completely sealed off his escape route, and strange grass was sprouting from the ground, an ominous premonition spreading in the heart of the third seat. Snap. A crisp snap echoed through the underground space. The air around the third seat was rapidly compressed, a large amount of nitrogen and oxygen separated, and with a flicker of a weak flame, a violent explosion erupted. Amidst the surging flames, a dark hue enveloped the third seat, and he shot out like lightning, the dark hue continuously eroding his body, wrapping him like a thin shell. At the same time, behind him, the void slowly opened up into 9 black whirlpools. A chilling and eerie aura instantly swept across the entire underground altar. The moment Lin Qier sensed this aura, his brows furrowed slightly. It felt as if he were submerged in the deep sea, making him extremely uncomfortable. Immediately after, 4 of the whirlpools condensed into 4 black flower buds. As the dark hue on the third seat deepened, these 4 black flower buds began to silently bloom. The other 5 whirlpools also showed signs of flower buds forming, but perhaps due to the third seat being heavily injured, those 5 flower buds only appeared for a moment before shattering on their own. 9. And Qingyu squinted slightly upon seeing those flower buds. Do you recognize this forbidden ruin? Lin Chia turned to look at him. And Qingyu nodded. Forbidden ruin sequence 078 9. Do you see those 9 flower buds behind him? He can extract the forbidden ruins that the corpse possessed in life and store them, up to 9 times in total. However, the requirements are quite strict. The stored forbidden ruin sequence cannot exceed his own. The realm of the corpse in life cannot exceed his own. Each corpse can only be extracted once, and the forbidden ruin can only be used once after being stored. Peeling off someone else's forbidden ruin from their corpse and using it all at once? Lin Chia pondered. Sounds quite dangerous. Whether it's dangerous or not depends on how powerful the forbidden ruins he extracts are, and Qingyu said. Fortunately, he is injured now and can only activate 9 4 times, meaning he can use up to 4 different abilities. Just as the two were discussing, the first flower bud had fully bloomed. A man's phantom slowly emerged on the dark shell surrounding the third seat. He raised his hands and a powerful whirlwind suddenly surged underground. The gale swept through every corner, causing everyone to sway slightly, while the third seat's body gradually floated into the air under the wind's influence. That shadow, why does it feel so familiar? Lin Chia stared at the man's phantom reflected on the dark shell, seemingly deep in thought. When using the forbidden ruins recorded by 9, the original owner's appearance will be revealed. And Qingyu turned to Lin Chia. Do you know him? Between the third seat's hands, a wind eye was gradually forming. Lin Chia thought carefully for a moment, his expression gradually becoming strange. Well, not only do I know him but I think many people here do too, and... Lin Chia turned to look at Shin Qingzhu. The person who cracked this forbidden ruin is also here. He would certainly not forget that forbidden ruin. Back in Songnan, it had nearly destroyed half a city. Forbidden Ruin Sequence 079, Great Wind Disaster. And its master was named Han Xiaoyun. Shin Qingzhu's expression also became strange upon seeing the familiar wind eye. In midair, the wind eye in the third seat's palm grew larger, its contained energy accumulating at an astonishing rate. And beneath the dark shell, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. This is all your fault. Snap. Before the third seat could finish his sentence, a snap suddenly rang out from the ground. In an instant, the wind eye in the third seat's palm vanished without a trace. Third seat. He looked down and saw Shin Qingzhu silently watching him, her right hand still suspended in the air after snapping her fingers. After a moment, Shin Qingzhu seemed to realize her act was becoming a bit lax, and a struggling expression appeared on her face, her eyes trembling uncontrollably. I today will fight you all, to the bitter end. Damn. The third seat was so furious he felt like his lungs were about to explode. He suppressed the urge to slap Shin Qingzhu dead and opened the second flower bud behind him. This time, a shadow of an unknown woman appeared. Dense thunder roamed through the air like silver snakes dancing wildly. The third seat swayed and his entire being transformed into a bolt of lightning disappearing from the spot. The next moment he appeared right in front of Lin Chia. Dense arcs of lightning surged in his hand, resembling a thick thunder whip, which he swung fiercely toward Lin Chia's face. Lin Chia's pupils constricted, and he instantly activated his reverse summon magic, vanishing into thin air. Long before the battle began, he had concealed 2 straight blades eroded by the night in the darkness. Now with Slash White and Prey Abyss, the role of those 2 blades began to shift towards support. As Lin Chia flickered to the side of the straight blades, he quickly turned around, and with Slash White in hand he slashed toward the third seat from a distance. In the face of Slash White, which ignored distance no matter where Lin Chia swung his blade, he could injure the third seat. A streak of snow-white blade light cut through the space, striking the back of the dark shell, but only leaving a shallow cut. After all, he was facing a Klein Realm powerhouse. Even though he was heavily injured, breaking through his defenses was still not an easy task. At that moment, a deep blue figure leaped up from the ground. Jalan held a golden spear, her black hair billowing in the wind, her gaze fixed on the third seat in midair, and the spear tip suddenly thrust out. A thick golden beam pierced through the air, directly blasting a large hole in the ground, shooting straight into the sky. Sizzle! The third seat's figure flickered amidst the lightning, and in the blink of an eye he appeared behind Jalan, his hands clasped together like a giant hammer, crashing down with endless lightning onto Jalan's back. Boom! Jalan's figure was directly smashed into the ground. The third seat looked down at the deep pit he had created, a cold smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. The first one,